Esther Ghey met with Scarlett Jenkinson's mother and uncle in what she described as a personal and respectful meeting, saying both families' lives have been changed forever by the tragedy. 16-year-old Brianna Ghey was killed in a frenzied and ferocious attack in February last year. Her killers, Scarlett Jenkinson and Eddie Ratcliffe, both received life sentences.
I'm really glad that we had the meeting. Both Scarlett's mum and uncle are very nice people. They're just normal people. And I think that what has happened has impacted their family massively, just the same as it's impacted mine. And yeah, we had a few like very personal. We spoke about very personal things, and she was very open with me, and she was so respectful as well. And I think that sorry, I don't want to cry. I think that her coming to see me shows a great deal of bravery on her part as well. And yeah, it was a very emotional meeting, but I'm so glad that I did that, and I appreciate them for giving me the opportunity as well.
What an exceptional woman. What an unusual woman, I think, at any rate. Joining me now, former Met Police Detective Peter Bleksley. Peter, thank you for coming. Are you aware in your long career in the police force of this often happening, that the mother or father of a victim will speak to and seek out the parents of the perpetrator in this way?
No, I'm not. In fact, just a few short years ago, not in a policing capacity, but with a connection to a family who lost a loved one, I was outside the Old Bailey doing the more common thing, which is keeping families apart.
Yes, quite.
Because so often there is huge animosity and people are driven by thoughts of revenge and the such like, which can be very damaging and eat away at you.
Sure.
But Esther Ghey is astonishing. And there's a 5-minute interview that people can see if they go to the Sun's website, where she is questioned as to the whys and the hows that this happened. And it really is quite remarkable. And if it works for Esther, and if it works for Scarlett's mother and her uncle, then I, for one, am most definitely not going to criticise.
I would dream of criticising it, but I can, I think, and many people will, wonder at it. You'll just think, of in their household, the household of your perpetrator's parents, they have lost the presence of their children because they ferociously and vilely took the life of your child. You in your house have no child because your child is dead, because your child has been murdered brutally by their child. So you could say that the similarities that Esther is so extraordinarily focusing on, what they have in common, you could say, my God, the situation just couldn't be more different, really.
Yes, but although there's another comparison or similarity that Esther Ghey talks about, and she said the challenges that faced both of them raising teenagers in this day and age. It's not that long ago that my youngest kids were teenagers, but I kind of appreciate what she's saying, because she's talking particularly about influences from the internet, whether they're digested through a laptop or through a phone and the such like, and the problems that arise for parents in trying to monitor, oversee, control what teenagers digest and what in turn can so often influence them and their behaviours.
I mean, it's an extraordinary story. I wonder whether she's building to creating some kind of foundation in Brianna's memory, or, working towards trying to protect and insulate young people against the noxious forces that they really might come upon and almost inevitably do come upon online.
She is. She's trying to get mindfulness into schools, and that seems to be the focus of her campaign. A few weeks ago, she did speak about trying to have some influence with the technology firms so that 16-year-olds and younger could only be given types of phones that would access certain parts of the internet. But there was no mention of it during this interview. But she did speak about the mindfulness, and if that's what she wants to do, once again, I wouldn't criticise. I just wonder what head teachers might say and what the education secretary might say in terms of funding it and finding some room in the curriculum, perhaps.
And honestly, I think many people would feel that for young people to behave in the way that Brianna's murderers did, there would be something at fault or some kind of issue in their own upbringing. And one of those factors of that would be that you wouldn't necessarily want to meet the parents. You might think that, you know, these children are the result of a certain kind of family that isn't the kind of family you'd want to have much to do with, really.
As the sentencing judge said, Scarlett Jenkinson and Eddie Ratcliffe were two deeply, deeply disturbed young people who plotted this, who planned about it, who fantasised about killing people. Clearly very, very troubled minds who are going to serve long jail sentences now when they can confront their wrongdoing, and likewise those that are treating them and with them can see if there's any hope of these young minds, which were so damaged and awful, being rehabilitated. Yeah. But that, of course, will be a question for a couple of decades' time.
Do you think, I mean, with all your years of experience, Peter, do you think that parents, teachers, that society could try harder or could put measures in place to protect young people from what's out there online? Or do you think really it's just an inevitable fact of life these days where your phone, and mine's right here, nobody ever leaves their phone anywhere for 1 second, is that you're going to be accessed by, and you're going to be vulnerable to all sorts of things that you're going to wish you never saw?
I'm going to set this case completely aside now, right, because I don't want what I've got to say to be perceived in any way, shape or form as a criticism of any parent, of any young person connected to this dreadfully sad case. I speak merely as a father of three. I think schools, society and parents have become afraid of the D word. And the D word for me is discipline. My children had phones when they were growing up. They had smartphones when they were teenagers and the such like, but there was an element of control over when they could access. Both my wife and I would probe and question, what are they accessing? But we also did that in a very collaborative way when sitting around the dinner table, having dinner and talk about the dangers. We had the benefit of my wife working in child protection for the majority of her police career. So there was nobody better placed to talk about the pitfalls and the dangers of accessing stuff on the internet, for example. And then also my coming from a position of practical policing, so the dangers on the street and the such like. So our kids grew up very much aware of that. But so when I used the D word, perhaps a little clumsily, for me, that was all part of discipline. We were training them, but we were disciplining them. And I think that's sadly lacking.
Peter, thank you very much indeed.